There is a certain kind of silence that surrounds women who live alone. A silence not born from emptiness, but from power. You see her walking down the street, keys in one hand, coffee in the other, her heels clicking with purpose, not panic, no glances over her shoulder, no waiting for permission. She owns the air she breathes, the floor she walks on, and the space she occupies. And yet, the world looks at her with curiosity.
How does she do it?
Does she ever feel lonely? Why hasn't someone claimed her yet? But this is the truth. She has already claimed herself. Emotional depth, strength, and truth. A woman who lives alone does not live in absence. She lives in full presence. Her bed is not cold. It is a kingdom, a sacred space where her mind rests without noise, without intrusion. Her sheets smell like lavender and freedom, not compromise. She doesn't wait for the door to open. She chooses when and if it ever does. She doesn't need someone to hold her hand when her soul already knows how to hold itself together. This kind of woman, she shops alone, eats alone, travels alone, and heals alone. Not because she must, but because she can. And in doing so, she becomes something dangerous to a world that thrives on female dependence. She becomes unbothered. She becomes unavailable to chaos. She becomes unapologetic in her desires and decisions. She doesn't fill the silence with distractions. She doesn't beg the universe for companionship. Instead, she becomes her own best company. She pours herself wine and drinks it slowly. She turns on music that moves her spine. She dances in the kitchen with the lights low, not for anyone watching, but for herself. A woman who lives alone does not lack love. She has learned to generate it from within. She knows how to draw boundaries with fire and grace. She doesn't explain her solitude. It's not a confession, it's a statement. She's not healing so she can return to who she was. She's evolving into who she was always meant to become. There are no performance games in her world. No emotional striptease for approval. No bending, no breaking, no begging. She is not hard. She is not bitter. She is not lost. She is whole. And if you ask her if she's lonely, she'll smile, tilt her head and say, not even a little. Because she doesn't view solitude as punishment. She sees it as power. She knows how to sit with her darkness without needing someone else to light the way. She is both the flame and the keeper of it. This woman, she is not waiting to be rescued. She has already rescued herself. So to every woman who lives alone, own it. Let your mornings be rituals. Let your evenings be ceremonies. Let your time be a mirror, not of what you lack, but of everything you are. You are not incomplete. You are not waiting for life to begin. You are living it fully, fiercely, and freely. Let the world wonder.
Let them misunderstand.
Let them stare. Because while they search for meaning and connection, you have found it in independence. Never shrink yourself to fit someone's expectations. Never apologize for your autonomy. Never fear solitude. It is the soil where queens grow. You are not a half looking for its other piece. You are not a gap waiting to be filled.
You are not silence.
Needing noise. You are the answer. You are the storm. You are the sanctuary. And this world is lucky to have a woman like you in it. She owns her pleasure without permission. A woman who lives alone does not wait to be touched to feel sensual. She creates her own intimacy rituals, silk sheets, scented oils, soft lighting. Her sensuality is not performative. It is private, profound, and personal. She doesn't wait for anyone to give her permission to feel alive. She doesn't ask the world to make her feel desirable. Her intimacy does not begin in the arms of another. It begins in the quiet of her own presence. And when night falls and the city lights blur into nothing but distant hums, she steps into herself like stepping into water, deliberately, slowly, completely. There is a certain kind of woman who understands that her sensuality is not dependent on someone else's desire. Her body does not wake only when touched by someone else's hands. She is not asleep in her skin. She does not need a partner to remind her she is beautiful because she already believes it, deeply, completely, without hesitation. Every morning she meets herself in the mirror, not just to check her reflection, but to return to her truth. Her fingers glide over her jawline, her collarbone, the curve of her waist, not in vanity, but in reverence. There is no shame in how she sees herself, no embarrassment in how deeply she loves her own skin. It is not about being attractive for others. It is about being attuned to herself. At night, she lights candles, not for ambiance, but for intimacy. She wears what feels good against her skin, not what someone else might find sexy. Sometimes that means silk, other nights it's just skin. She understands that sensuality is not a costume, it's a language her body speaks fluently, even when no one else is listening. She knows how to touch herself, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. Her sensual rituals aren't about release, they're about presence. She lets the warm water of a bath wrap around her thighs, her stomach, her back, while her breath slows and her mind returns to her body. She lets the steam rise, fog the mirrors, blur the world outside, because in these moments, the only thing that exists is her. She chooses the music carefully, every note a brushstroke on her soul. Sometimes it's slow jazz, sometimes it's haunting violin, other times it's just silence. The kind of silence that amplifies the sound of her breath, the rhythm of her heart, the pulse between her thighs. She doesn't fear loneliness. She doesn't fill her bed with strangers just to feel wanted. She has learned that craving someone's body is not the same as craving someone's soul. And when the world mistakes her solitude for emptiness, they miss the whole truth. Her solitude is filled with intention. When she moves through her space, she moves with awareness. Her hips sway not for anyone's gaze, but because she is in rhythm with herself. Her hands know where to rest, what to linger on, what to slow down for. Her entire existence becomes an intimate dance with her senses, what she sees, hears, smells, tastes, and feels. She cooks for herself the way others cook for lovers. She sets the table not out of formality but out of respect. Her meals are not rushed, they are savored. She doesn't just eat to survive, she dines to feel. Every bite, every sip, every moment at that table is a quiet declaration that she is worth being cared for, especially by herself. She understands that intimacy is not always shared. It can be owned. She owns her pleasure, not just in physicality, but in emotional clarity. She knows what turns her on, what turns her off, and what lives in the gray space between. She isn't afraid of her needs, doesn't run from her desires. She explores them, studies them, honors them. When she lies in bed at night, she doesn't reach for her phone. She reaches for herself, not always for stimulation, sometimes just for stillness. Her fingertips become a reminder that connection does not always require another. Sometimes the most profound connection is the one forged between mind and body, breath and skin, memory and imagination.
She remembers every time she gave herself what she once begged others to give her: attention, softness, touch, warmth. She no longer begs, she no longer waits. She no longer trades her worth for crumbs of affection.
And she's learned that when you no longer look to others to awaken your sensuality, you become dangerous. Because now, no one controls the switch. No one holds the power to make or break your confidence. You become your own ignition, your own fire, your own flame. She's walked through nights of longing, but instead of running from it, she sat with it. And in those moments, she discovered that longing isn't a curse, it's a compass. It points to the parts of her that still need softness, still crave touch, still deserve light. She gives herself that light. She creates moments that feel like foreplay for the soul. Slow, patient, aware, the glide of lotion on her legs, the brush of her fingers across her neck, the soft inhale before she closes her eyes and slips under her sheets. This is not a woman deprived of intimacy. This is a woman who has redefined it. She makes love to her space.
Her home becomes an extension of her body.
The way she arranges her bed, the way she moves through her living room barefoot, music playing, this is her romance. She seduces life, not people. Her body is not a negotiation. She doesn't trade her body for validation. Her body is her temple, touched only by hands that match her energy. She doesn't give in for connection. She offers herself only when she feels safe, seen, and sovereign. They say a home is just four walls and a roof. But for her, it's more than that. It's an extension of her breath, her mood, her rhythm. She doesn't just live in her space, she seduces it. And in return, it holds her like a faithful lover would, quietly, attentively, completely. There's something deeply erotic about the way she moves through her home. She's not rushing, she's not scrambling. There is no chaos. Every step she takes is a soft whisper across the floor. She doesn't walk from room to room, she glides. The air feels different when she's alone, thicker, warmer, quieter. Her silence is not empty. It's charged. It's electric. It's sensual. She doesn't need anyone to come home to because she has made her home feel like someone. The pillows know her sigh. The walls remember her laughter. The mirrors have memorized the curve of her lips. When she smiles at her own reflection, not with arrogance, but with acknowledgement, she has created a space that welcomes her back, like warm hands pulling her in. She's not lonely in her home. She is worshipped by it. The scent of vanilla and amber trails behind her, winding through the rooms like a secret. She lights candles not because it's romantic, but because she is. Romance isn't reserved for dates. It's stitched into the way she folds her sheets, the way she runs her fingers across the books on her shelf, the way she opens the curtains and lets sunlight pour over her body like a slow golden kiss. She doesn't wait for weekend getaways to feel sensual. She creates them daily in her own living room. Her throw blankets feel like skin. Her couch becomes a temple. She wraps herself in textures that calm her nervous system, fabrics that remember her shape and form. Every corner is carefully arranged to please her senses. She knows where the softest light hits the floor. She knows where to sit when the moonlight floods in. Her space isn't functional, it's foreplay. There are nights when she dims every light and lets music play as she walks barefoot across the hardwood floor. She lets the rhythm lead her. Her hips begin to sway, not for a camera, not for a lover watching, but for herself. Because movement is pleasure, because presence is sensuality, because being in her body, in her home, in her energy is enough to feel awakened. She makes love to her space by being fully inside it, not just physically, but emotionally. She feels every corner, every texture, every shift in air. She places her hand on the kitchen counter and feels the coolness meet her skin. She trails her fingers across the window glass, fogging it with her breath, writing messages only she will ever read. Even the act of preparing tea becomes a ritual. The sound of the kettle boiling, the steam rising, the cup warming her hands. She sits slowly, legs curled under her, robe slipping slightly off her shoulder, and sips like the drink holds a secret only she deserves to know. And maybe it does. Because in that moment she has no need to be touched by anyone else. Her body is already responding to her attention. Her stillness has become her arousal. Her bedroom is not a place for sleep alone. It is an experience. Her sheets are chosen with care. The color of the duvet, the scent of the linen spray, the temperature of the room. It's not for guests. It's for her. Because she knows she doesn't need an audience to deserve beauty. She doesn't tidy her home for someone's arrival. She creates order because her nervous system craves peace, because when her space breathes, tree breathes. When the surfaces are clear, her thoughts are clear. When the lighting is soft, her heart softens. This isn't domesticity, this is devotion to herself. She lights incense and watches the smoke swirl like desire in the air. It moves like her breath, slow and intentional. She doesn't rush through her day. She lingers. She pauses. She lets herself feel everything, even the emptiness, especially the emptiness, because she knows the emptiness isn't void. It's potential. It's space she gets to fill with softness, color, silence, music, or movement. The kitchen is not just where she cooks, it's where she nourishes herself emotionally. She chooses ingredients the way she chooses words, carefully. Her hands glide over fruits, spices, oils. There is intimacy in preparation. There is seduction in patience. She stirs slowly, tasting as she goes, not just for flavor, but for feeling. She doesn't just exist in her home. She makes it feel her. The energy she pours into it doesn't stay in the cushions or the walls. It returns to her, again and again, like a lover who knows how to listen. Her home holds her moods, her joy, her melancholy, her longing, and still it asks for nothing in return, just her presence. Every object has a place. Every sound has a purpose. Every hour alone is not a countdown, it's a crescendo. She isn't waiting for someone to walk through that door. She has already arrived, fully, sensually, unapologetically. Her body is not a negotiation. She doesn't trade her body for validation. Her body is her temple, touched only by hands that match her energy. She doesn't give in for connection. She offers herself only when she feels safe, seen, and sovereign. There's a line she no longer crosses, a threshold between wanting to be desired and begging to be accepted. She's learned through pain, through silence, through nights spent questioning her worth, that her body is not a negotiation table. Her desire is not up for debate. Her softness is not a transaction to earn someone's time, attention, or affection. She no longer stretches herself thin for someone else's convenience. She no longer bends just to be chosen, because she has finally realized her body is not a bargain. It's not something to be traded for closeness. It is not a bribe. It is not a gift handed over in desperation. It is a temple, a sanctuary, a place only sacred hands should ever be allowed to enter. There was a time when she used to mistake attention for love, when the brush of skin, the weight of a body, the whisper of a promise felt like intimacy. But she knows better now. She knows that someone can touch you and still not see you. Someone can kiss you and never know you. And someone can lie next to you and leave you feeling completely and utterly alone. So now she listens to how someone looks at her, not with hunger, but with reverence. Not with entitlement, but with curiosity. She no longer feels flattered by being wanted. She feels connected only when she is respected. And in the quiet space between her self-worth and her sexuality, she's built something rare, something powerful, something untouchable by casual desire. Her body does not exist to perform. It is not a stage. Not every curve is an invitation. Not every sigh is a signal. Her intimacy is not performative. It's not put on for applause. It's felt deeply, fully, privately. She doesn't need to prove how desirable she is. She knows. She feels it in the way she walks, the way her clothes rest on her skin, the way her reflection meets her gaze, with quiet confidence. She chooses when and how she opens herself, not just physically but emotionally, because now she understands that real intimacy begins long before two bodies meet. It begins in the energy, in the eyes, in the silence, in the space where trust breathes and boundaries are honored. She's tasted what it feels like to be touched without being loved, and she's no longer interested. She doesn't crave friction, she craves depth. She craves someone who will sit in stillness with her, who will undress her mind before her body, who will ask questions and actually listen to the answers. Because for her, intimacy is not about heat, it's about presence. There are moments when her skin aches, yes, when she longs to be held, but she doesn't reach out in weakness. She doesn't surrender just to feel something. Instead, she folds herself into her sheets, closes her eyes, and reminds herself no temporary body is worth the long-term betrayal of her own boundaries. And her body? It responds to truth now. Not pressure, not pleading, not manipulation masked as romance. It opens for energy that feels safe, words that feel intentional, hands that feel like home. She doesn't rush, she doesn't chase, she doesn't offer herself to someone who only sees her as an escape or a distraction. There is a fire within her, yes, but not everyone is meant to touch it. Not everyone can handle the kind of woman who chooses when to ignite and when to hold her flame. Because this woman has been burned before, and she's no longer willing to dim herself just to be kept warm by someone else's inconsistency. She has learned to say no with softness, to walk away with grace, to close doors without slamming them, and still never return. Because every time she betrays her own boundaries, a piece of her breaks, and she's done breaking for people who don't know how to build with her. She adorns herself not for attention, but for herself. Her perfume, her lingerie, her silk robe, none of it is for show. It's for sensation, for connection to her body, for the mere moments when she turns, catches a glimpse of herself and smiles, not because she's trying to seduce someone, but because she already feels seduced by her own existence. She does not need validation through touch. She is not counting compliments. She is not waiting for someone to name her beautiful, because she knows. She knows the value of her smile. She knows the depth of her presence. She knows the way her body carries strength, softness, survival, and sensuality all at once. There's a kind of intimacy she craves now, one that doesn't start in the bedroom, one that begins in conversation, in slow glances, in laughter that disarms, in shared silences that feel like trust. That kind of intimacy doesn't rush, it lingers, it waits, it asks, "Are you safe here?" before it ever asks to undress anything. She doesn't just want to be touched. She wants to be understood. She doesn't just want a climax. She wants communion. She doesn't just want someone to want her. She wants someone who honors her body, mind, spirit, all of it or none of it. And until that comes, she keeps her doors closed, her standards high, and her energy guarded, because her body is not a transaction. It is sacred ground, and no one enters unless they know how to kneel. She finds intimacy in silence. True intimacy isn't loud. It's not always sex. It's the way she lies in the bathtub, water hugging her curves like a lover. It's how she breathes into her own softness. She knows solitude can be more erotic than a crowded bed. There's a silence she's grown to crave, a silence that doesn't feel like absence but arrival. It's the kind that fills a room, not with noise, but with presence. The kind that doesn't ask questions or offer apologies. It just is. And in that stillness, she finds a kind of intimacy that no words could ever touch. Most people are afraid of silence. They run from it, fill it with distractions, escape into noise, because silence reveals everything. The ache, the truth, the craving, but not her. She's learned to make love to it, to sink into it, like warm water. Because silence, to her, is not emptiness. It's honesty, and only the brave can sit inside it without trying to run. She lies in her bathtub with the lights low, steam curling around her like fingers tracing her skin. No music, no voices, just the soft sound of water lapping against porcelain and her own breath slowing, deepening. In that moment, there is no performance, no pretending, just the raw presence of her body against the water, her heartbeat echoing in her chest, her thoughts unraveling like silk. She doesn't need to be touched to feel intimacy. She is intimacy. The way her fingers trail over the edge of the tub, the way she closes her eyes and inhales the scent of eucalyptus and rose, the way she listens to the quiet inside her own mind and doesn't flinch. This is her sanctuary. Her body is not waiting to be awakened. It is already alive in the silence. There's something erotic about solitude when you stop resisting it, when you stop seeing it as the space where something is missing and start seeing it as the space where something sacred unfolds. She no longer mistakes silence for punishment. She understands it as preparation, as protection, as the purest space where her soul and her body get to meet without interference. She curls up in bed, no one beside her, no one texting good night, and still she feels held by the softness of the blankets, by the quiet hum of the night, by the way the moonlight pours over her bare shoulder like a secret lover. She doesn't reach for someone else to complete the night. She is the completion. In the stillness, she hears things she used to drown out, the longing beneath her ribs, the ache in her chest, the fire behind her eyes, and she doesn't run from it. She leans in, she listens, she lets the ache speak, she lets the longing breathe, because it's not weakness to feel deeply, it's sacred. She walks through her home, barefoot, the floor cool under her soles, a cup of tea warming her palms. The silence follows her like a gentle shadow. No demands, no expectations, just a reminder that she belongs here, that she's enough, even with no one watching. The intimacy she finds in silence is different. It's not reactive, not responsive. It doesn't wait for a compliment or a caress. It simply is. And in that presence, she rediscovers her own worth over and over again. She becomes her own witness, her own mirror, her own flame. She lies on the couch, legs tangled in a soft throw, eyes closed, and lets herself feel every inch of her body without judgment. She runs her hands down her thighs, not for arousal, but for awareness. She presses her palm to her chest and feels her own heartbeat, steady, strong. This is intimacy. This is being with herself, not just near herself.
Yes.
There are no scripts here, no roles to play, no lines to deliver. She doesn't have to be funny or soft or sexy. She doesn't have to be anything. She can just exist, and that is the most erotic thing of all, the freedom to be seen by herself, as she is in the silence. She stopped seeking people who need her to shrink her noise or expand her silence to make them comfortable. She now only entertains energies that respect the stillness she holds. Because not everyone can handle a woman who doesn't flinch in quiet, a woman who can sit alone and still feel completely full. She's learned that intimacy is not in the chaos, not in the fireworks, it's in the gentle moments, in the sound of her fingers turning the page of a book, in the way she closes her eyes and breathes before speaking, in the way she lets her thoughts settle before reacting. That softness, that slowness is where the magic lives. When she lights candles in the evening, it's not to seduce someone, it's to return to herself. When she walks slowly down her hallway, hand brushing the wall, hips swaying to no music but her own pulse, she feels the presence of something ancient, herself, unfiltered, unshaken, undeniable. The stillness doesn't scare her anymore. It seduces her. It strips away everything she isn't and leaves only what's real. And what's real is enough. Her breath, her heartbeat, her presence. That's the kind of intimacy most people never reach. Not because it's far away, but because they never sit still long enough to find it. She doesn't fill the quiet with apologies. She doesn't fill the silence with compromise. She fills it with presence. She has learned that sometimes the most powerful intimacy is not being touched at all. It's being understood in the space where no words are spoken, and still everything is said. She does not beg to be desired. She embodies desire. She doesn't chase, she attracts. Her energy is magnetic because it is rooted in knowing she is enough. Her presence lingers like perfume, subtle, strong, unforgettable. She is desire itself, not a reaction to someone else's. She doesn't chase attention anymore. She doesn't crave approval the way she once did. There's a shift that happens deep inside a woman when she realizes that she is not meant to be desired. She is meant to embody desire. And once that awareness sets in, everything changes. She doesn't perform. She doesn't beg. She doesn't dress for the gaze of others. She becomes the flame, not the moth.
You can see it in how she walks. Slow, intentional, unrushed.
Like every step is a sentence in a story only she understands, like her hips are in conversation with gravity, like her breath is in harmony with her purpose. She doesn't need to shout to be noticed. She doesn't need to flirt to be remembered. Her presence lingers like perfume on skin, subtle, intoxicating, unforgettable. She no longer wakes up wondering who will think she's beautiful today. She already knows. She doesn't look in the mirror searching for flaws. She looks in the mirror and sees power in her eyes, in her posture, in the curve of her mouth that only smiles when it's genuine. She's no longer playing the game of being picked. She picks herself again and again every single day. She has become magnetic, not because she's trying to be, but because she stopped trying at all. She no longer curates her femininity to fit someone else's fantasy. She reclaims it for herself. She wears silk not to be undressed, but to feel her own softness. She applies perfume not to attract, but to inhale her own divinity. She adorns herself because she is the altar, and she worships her own energy. There is something profoundly erotic about a woman who knows she doesn't need to be validated. She doesn't ask, am I enough? Because she's already living in the answer. And that answer is yes, deeply, fully, without condition. Her value is not measured by who wants her. It's measured by how fully she belongs to herself. She no longer responds to every spark. Not every glance, not every compliment is worth her energy. She's learned the difference between being wanted and being revered, between someone who sees her as a thrill and someone who sees her as a world. She doesn't melt for shallow attention anymore. Her fire is reserved for depth.
Her boundaries are no longer walls.
They are invitations, clear, strong, unapologetic. She doesn't scream them, she embodies them. You feel it when you speak to her. You feel it when you touch her. You feel it when you look into her eyes and realize she's not asking to be loved. She is love, refined and protected. She doesn't seduce through exposure. She seduces through energy, through eye contact that doesn't flinch, through silence that says everything, through presence that fills a room and makes you forget what you were even thinking about a moment ago. She makes you pay attention, not because she demands it, but because her truth doesn't give you a choice.
When she walks into a room, she doesn't compete, she doesn't compare. She knows what she brings and what she refuses to bring.
Her power is not in being everything for everyone. It's in being fully herself, even if that means being too much for some. She doesn't dilute herself to be digestible. She is not here to be tolerated. She is here to be felt. Her body is no longer an audition. She doesn't need to be touched to feel wanted. She wants to be understood. She wants to be recognized. She wants someone who sees her not as a conquest, but as a force. Because she is not here to perform intimacy. She is intimacy. She is present. She is awareness wrapped in skin. She has stopped explaining her standards. If someone can't meet them, they're simply not for her. She no longer breaks herself into pieces just to be digestible to someone else's appetite. She serves herself, whole or not at all. She has become too full of her own truth to starve for attention. Her sensuality isn't loud, but it's unmistakable. It's in the way she crosses her legs with purpose. The way her voice drops when she means what she says. The way she pours her wine, slowly, as if time bends around her. She makes everyday moments feel like rituals. She turns eye contact into intimacy. She turns space into surrender. Even when she's alone, she's never waiting. She doesn't pace the floor wishing for someone to arrive. She's already arrived. In her solitude, in her softness, in the rich grounded energy that moves through her like breath. She doesn't wear loneliness like a burden. She wears independence like a second skin. Her magnetism doesn't scream, it whispers, and those who can hear it feel it in their bones. She doesn't persuade people to love her. She simply radiates such wholeness that those who are aligned can't help but be drawn to her. Not because she needs them, but because she is the kind of woman you don't forget. She's not the echo of someone else's desires. She is the source. She is not waiting to be discovered. She has discovered herself. And now everything she touches is infused with that knowing, with that depth, with that quiet fire that only grows stronger the less she tries. She redefines intimacy as a relationship with herself. The most sacred connection she builds is the one with her own body, mind, and soul. From the way she moisturizes her skin to the way she speaks to herself in the mirror, her intimacy is self-generated, self-honored, and self-sustaining. There's a kind of intimacy that doesn't start with someone else. It begins in the most private moments, behind closed doors, in the quiet rituals that no one else sees. She's learned to stop waiting for someone to unlock that feeling. She's found the key in her own hands. She doesn't borrow connection anymore. She builds it with herself, from the inside out. She's no longer looking outward to feel alive. She knows how to wake up her own senses. The way her fingertips glide over her skin after a warm shower. The way she moisturizes slowly, deliberately, letting her hands become a reminder that she's still here, still sacred, still worth being touched with love. There's no rush, no task, just presence, just devotion. She speaks to herself now, not always out loud, but through gestures. The soft towel she wraps around her body. The way she pours her coffee in silence and holds the mug like she's holding a memory. These are the things no one taught her to cherish. She discovered them the hard way, after giving so much of herself to people who never truly saw her. Now, she sees herself, every part, the messy mornings, the tear-stained nights, the days where her laughter fills the room, and the ones where the silence is heavier than usual. All of it belongs to her. All of it is worthy of intimacy. She doesn't wait for flowers to be delivered. She buys them for herself. Not because she's trying to prove she's okay on her own, but because beauty belongs in her life. Even when no one else is watching, especially when no one is watching, that's when the real relationship happens. That's when the real intimacy starts to bloom. She no longer starves herself emotionally just to be low maintenance. She feeds her own heart. She writes herself little notes. She lights candles at dinner, even when she's eating alone. She creates warmth not because she needs company, but because she deserves to feel held, even by her own atmosphere. She doesn't just exist in her space. She creates it, loves it into something sacred. And when the world feels loud, when the chaos rises, she knows how to come back to herself, not by escaping, but by returning. By lying down with her thoughts and letting them unravel, by holding her breath just long enough to find her center again, by letting her own presence soothe the ache that used to make her reach for people who were never really there for her. She has stopped begging to be seen. She now sees herself in ways no one else ever could. The mirror doesn't just show her reflection, it reveals her growth. The stretch marks, the laugh lines, the tired eyes after a long week, all of it speaks of life, of living, of learning. She no longer critiques what she sees. She honors it. She's discovered that real intimacy isn't about another person unlocking her. It's about her being brave enough to unpeel her own layers, to sit in her own vulnerability, to whisper "I love you" to the parts of herself she used to ignore. She knows now, this body, this heart, this spirit, they aren't just vehicles, they are homes. And she has finally moved back in. She doesn't need a hand on her thigh to feel desired. She desires herself in the way she curls up with a book that speaks to her soul, in the way she fills the tub with oils that soften her skin, in the way she closes her eyes and touches her own neck, not for stimulation, but for stillness, for presence, for proof that she is here alive and enough. Even her loneliness is met with compassion. Now, she doesn't shame herself for the ache. She wraps her arms around it, whispers to it, breathes with it, because she knows it's not weakness. It's just a signal. A message that something inside wants deeper connection, and she can begin that with herself, right here, right now. She no longer defines intimacy as something that happens between two people. She defines it as something that starts within one. She embodies it in the way she slows down, in the way she chooses softness when the world demands hardness. She carries it in her gaze, in her tone, in the way her silence speaks louder than any scripted affection ever could. Her nights are no longer about emptiness. They are about return. She turns down the sheets with care. She tucks herself in like someone worth loving. And when she closes her eyes, she's not waiting for someone to arrive. She's already home. In her breath, in her body, in the sacred relationship she's spent years rebuilding with herself. She doesn't need permission to feel adored. She adores herself in how she protects her peace, in how she says no without guilt, in how she listens to her body when it's tired, how she nourishes herself with words that uplift rather than tear down. Every act becomes an offering, every day a soft rebellion against the idea that intimacy only happens in someone else's arms. She's found something deeper now, a closeness with herself that no one can shake, a knowing that doesn't require validation, a sensuality that doesn't need to be seen to be real. And in that stillness, in that certainty, she has discovered the most sacred relationship of all, the one that will never leave her, betray her, or ask her to be less than everything she already is.